So here I am on Thursday mornings. This is not recorded while I'm having breakfast. On Thursday mornings, I have breakfast outside of the parish, and I ate at a small little breakfast place called the Bagel Bin. It's right across the street from, almost right across Shirley Ave from Revere Beach Station in, obviously, Revere, Massachusetts. If you've ever seen the movie Next Stop Wonderland or familiar with it, Wonderland is the last stop on the Blue Line. Revere Beach Station is the second to last stop on the Blue Line. And the Bagel Bin's right across the street. So it's a great place. Really encourage you to check it out. Anyway, that said, so I'm reading the Wall Street Journal, as I do every single morning in the Bagel Bin. And there's an editorial here by Ellen Bork. Now, Ellen Bork is the daughter of Robert Bork, who was the nominee to the Supreme Court, who was rejected but has been very outspoken and written several books on the issue of where our country is going. Ellen Bork wrote this great editorial about some of the issues that are not seen in China, and those issues have to deal with the great oppression that happens there. One of the paragraphs here, she talks about that journalists have to be licensed, and they also have to go through a Marxist indoctrination. And if they are saying things that the government doesn't like, or if they do things the government doesn't like, that could get them into a lot of trouble. And she gives the example of a Shai Tao who relayed the content of a directive that Chinese government gives to those things that they'll cover it a certain way, whether it be SARS or something like that. Just simply relayed this directive to a Chinese website. And now that reporter is in jail for 10 years on the charge of leaking state secrets. This is one of the grave issues that are going on in China, this intense oppression. And as you see, journalists are licensed. You also will know that the Chinese will respond in a way when you say, well, what about religion? They say, well, we believe in freedom of religion. You just have to register your church in our country. Well, that's actually a ruse, because if you register your church in the country, then what happens is now the country knows, the Chinese know where your church is, and they send spies in. The Russians used to do the same thing. Well, communist countries do that. And they literally send spies in to watch what's going on in the church. That's why you have an underground church in China, because people do not want to be spied on. By the way, that practice of being spied on is where we get the issue of godparents for baptism, because the Romans used to do the same thing in the early days of Christianity. When we look at that and we see that, we can see this intense oppression which is behind the scenes in China. I mean, people are in jail for their religion. People are in jail for writing the wrong thing. This is also an element of China. Well, here's the issue when you look at it. As a baby boomer, one of the things that comes into my mind is a saying we used to have growing up. Man landed on the moon in 1969. I was 11. And after that point, you'd hear, well, we can put a man on the moon, but why can't we have washing machines that clean clothes themselves without us having to do it? Why can't we have, you name anything you want. We can put a man on the moon. Why can't you have? And many things that we would want to have then, we have now. We can put a man on the moon. Why can't we have a telephone that you can walk around with? Well, we'll look at it this way. In our world today, we can put a man on the moon. Why do we still have to have governments where people can be put in jail for absolutely ridiculous things because the government needs to be oppressive? Why, in a time when you can put a man on the moon, do we have to still live with oppressive governments? Good question to think about. Have a good day.